The day my parents missed one of my chemotherapy appointments because they were tasting wedding cake samples, I finally understood my place in the family. Apparently, vanilla buttercream was having a bigger emergency than cancer. My sister had spent the previous year transforming her wedding into what she called a once-in-a-lifetime content opportunity. She wasn't just getting married. She was launching a personal brand. Every conversation revolved around engagement metrics, sponsorship opportunities, and whether the wedding drone footage should be filmed at sunrise or sunset. My parents were completely caught up in the madness. They spent thousands on decorations, photographers, imported flowers, and enough lighting equipment to guide aircraft safely onto a runway. Meanwhile, I was sitting in hospital waiting rooms trying not to throw up after treatments. Whenever I pointed out the difference in priorities, my mother would tell me not to be selfish. Selfish. Because apparently wanting a ride to chemotherapy was less important than selecting custom napkin designs. My father once spent 45 minutes arguing with a wedding planner about gold-colored chair covers while forgetting my treatment schedule entirely. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was the attention. Every social media post featured my sister smiling beside countdown calendars, wedding dresses, and luxury venues. I was practically invisible. The only person who seemed to notice was a woman I met during one of my hospital visits. She wasn't human. That sounds ridiculous, but by that point my week had already included discussing floral arrangements during a cancer diagnosis, so my standards for normal had dropped significantly. She worked with an interspecies medical outreach program that helped patients navigate treatments. She had a sharp sense of humor, bright silver eyes, and absolutely no patience for nonsense. Which meant she immediately hated my family's wedding obsession. When I explained why I was sitting alone in the treatment center, she stared at me for several seconds. "Your parents skipped chemotherapy for a cake tasting?" "Technically 3 cake tastings." She blinked. "Humans are fascinating. That's one word for it. No, where I come from, abandoning sick family members for dessert would require a public apology ceremony." I laughed harder than I had in months. From that day forward, she made a habit of stopping by whenever our schedules overlapped. She brought terrible jokes. I brought sarcasm. Somehow it worked. For a little while, hospital visits became something I looked forward to. Then the wedding week arrived. The family home looked like a movie set. Photographers ran around carrying equipment. Makeup artists occupied entire rooms. My parents looked happier than I'd seen them in years. Not because their son was fighting through treatment. Because a wedding hashtag was trending locally. The morning of the ceremony, I had another appointment. My mother kissed my forehead and told me she'd call later. She didn't. My father promised he'd check in. He didn't. My sister was too busy live streaming her preparations to notice I was leaving. So I sat alone in the treatment center while hundreds of guests watched her celebrate online. For the first time, I stopped making excuses for them. Cancer wasn't the reason I felt alone. The reason was much simpler. My family had made a choice. And for them, I hadn't been the choice. 2 years can change almost everything. The treatments worked. Recovery wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't quick, but I survived. Every month I felt stronger. Every year I felt more like myself again. The biggest surprise wasn't beating cancer. It was discovering how much better life became when I stopped chasing people who didn't care. The silver-eyed woman from the hospital never disappeared from my life. If anything, she became impossible to get rid of. Not that I wanted to. She celebrated every clean medical report like her favorite sports team had won a championship. She dragged me out to restaurants when I wanted to stay home. She bullied me into exercising. She laughed at my jokes even when they weren't funny. Actually, especially when they weren't funny. According to her, watching me struggle was entertaining. Eventually friendship became dating. Dating became love. Love somehow became a shared apartment, a shared business, and a shared future. Together we launched a small marketing company focused on helping human and alien businesses communicate with each other. We started with one client and a folding table that looked like it had survived a small war. 2 years later, we had dozens of employees and more contracts than we could comfortably handle. Meanwhile, my sister's life looked perfect from the outside. Her wedding content exploded online. One sponsorship became 10. 10 became 50. Every week she posted photos from luxury vacations, expensive events, and glamorous influencer gatherings. My parents treated her social media accounts like national treasures. Every family conversation somehow turned into follower counts and brand partnerships. I stopped paying attention. Then everything collapsed. It started with an old video. Someone found footage from the wedding preparations. Nothing unusual at first. Then internet detectives did what internet detectives do best. They found dates. They matched schedules. They connected posts. And suddenly thousands of people realized that while my sister had been posting videos about floral arrangements and luxury catering, her brother had been receiving chemotherapy treatments alone. The internet was not impressed. Sponsors vanished almost overnight. Followers disappeared. Comment sections became war zones. My sister responded with an apology video. That apology created another controversy. Then came the second apology. Then the third apology. Then an apology for how she handled the previous apologies. At one point she cried on camera for 27 minutes, and somehow made things worse. My girlfriend watched the chaos unfold while eating popcorn. "I think your sister has apologized so many times that people have forgotten what the original apology was about. That's an impressive achievement. Professionally speaking, it's catastrophic. Financially, it was even worse. The sponsorship deals disappeared. The advertising revenue dried up. The expensive lifestyle became impossible to maintain. The wedding debts my parents had ignored for years suddenly looked very real. For the first time since that wedding day, nobody in my family was celebrating. I felt bad for about 6 seconds. Then I remembered sitting alone during treatment. One quiet Tuesday afternoon, while reviewing contracts at the office, my phone buzzed. A message appeared from a number I hadn't seen in nearly 2 years. My sister. The first words weren't an apology. They weren't, "How have you been?" They weren't, "I miss you." The message simply read, "Hey, I heard your company is hiring." I stared at the screen. Across the desk, my girlfriend noticed my expression. "Family?" "Unfortunately." She sighed dramatically. "Oh, good. I was worried life had become too peaceful." I probably should have ignored the message. A wiser man might have deleted it. A smarter man definitely would have. Unfortunately, curiosity has always been one of my character flaws. 3 days later, my sister was sitting across from me in one of our office conference rooms holding a resume that looked suspiciously shorter than her list of former sponsorships. The situation became even more uncomfortable because my girlfriend insisted on joining the interview panel. Her official reason was that she was co-owner of the company. Her actual reason was that she considered the entire situation better than reality television. My sister attempted a confident smile. It lasted approximately 4 seconds. Then she noticed a stack of interview forms sitting in front of us. "You actually have paperwork? That's generally how job interviews work. I thought this was more of a family discussion." "No," my girlfriend said cheerfully. "Those are usually much more traumatic." The interview began. At first, everything seemed normal. We asked about experience, past employment, professional skills. Then we reached the behavioral questions. The first one nearly ended the interview. "Tell us about a time you supported a family member through a difficult challenge." My sister froze. Completely froze. I watched her stare at the table as though the answer might be hidden somewhere in the wood grain. The silence stretched longer and longer. My girlfriend eventually glanced at her tablet. "Should I mark that as a work in progress?" My sister looked like she wanted the floor to open beneath her. The next question wasn't much better. "Describe how you handle public criticism." She immediately launched into a detailed explanation of online harassment, negative comments, cancelled sponsorships, and social media scandals. To be fair, she had plenty of experience in that category. Unfortunately, she somehow made herself sound worse with every sentence. Halfway through the answer, my phone vibrated. It was my mother. I ignored it. 30 seconds later, she called again. Then my father called. Then another message arrived. Be nice to your sister. A second text followed. Family comes first. I nearly laughed. Family came first now. Interesting timing. The interview continued. Over the next week, my sister completed several rounds. Not because I wanted to torture her. Because every applicant completed several rounds. Rules existed for a reason. By the third interview, something unexpected happened. The defensiveness started disappearing. The excuses became less frequent. For the first time in years, she stopped blaming sponsors, followers, critics, and bad luck. Instead, she started talking honestly. One afternoon, she sat quietly across from me after another interview session. Either of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, she sighed. You know what's embarrassing? I can think of several possibilities. I spent 2 years telling myself the internet ruined my life. I waited. But the truth is that I ruined it myself. That was probably the most honest sentence I had ever heard from her. She looked exhausted. Not physically. Emotionally. Like someone who had spent years running from a mistake and finally realized they couldn't outrun it anymore. I saw those videos, she said quietly. The wedding videos. I said nothing. I watched them after everything went public. Her eyes dropped toward the floor. I kept waiting to find context that would make me look better. My girlfriend remained unusually silent. That alone told me how serious the moment was. Instead of finding excuses, my sister continued. You were getting treatment while we were arguing about flower arrangements. I nodded once. She swallowed hard. I don't think I ever really understood how awful that was until I saw it from someone else's perspective. For the first time since she had walked into my office, she wasn't asking for a favor. She wasn't asking for a job. She wasn't asking for rescue. She was simply acknowledging the truth. And somehow that made the decision ahead of me much harder than I expected. Because for the first time, I wasn't looking at the selfish influencer who had ignored me. I was looking at someone who finally understood exactly what she had done. A week later, I made my decision. My sister wasn't getting a special position. She wasn't getting an executive title. She wasn't getting a shortcut. She was getting an entry-level job. The same starting point every employee received. When I informed her, she stared at me across my desk. Entry-level? Yes. I used to have millions of followers. Congratulations. I worked with major sponsors. That's wonderful. I had a verified account. My girlfriend nearly choked on her coffee. My sister looked at her. My girlfriend shrugged. I'm trying very hard to be supportive right now. To her credit, my sister accepted the offer. I think reality had finally humbled her enough to recognize that employment was better than unemployment. The first few weeks were absolutely glorious. Not for her. For everyone else. She arrived on her first day expecting something exciting. Instead, she received training manuals, client spreadsheets, performance metrics, deadlines, actual work. At one point, she spent 3 hours organizing marketing data. Afterward, she looked personally betrayed by the concept of employment. My girlfriend found this endlessly entertaining. Remember when she used to get paid for posting pictures of breakfast? Please don't remind her. Now she's categorizing expense reports. You're enjoying this far too much. I really am. The funniest part was watching my parents react. They couldn't understand why I wasn't promoting her immediately. My mother called repeatedly. My father suggested that family loyalty should count for something. I politely explained that family loyalty would have been useful 2 years earlier. Neither of them enjoyed hearing that. Still, something surprising happened over the following months. My sister adapted. She stopped complaining. She arrived on time. She learned new skills. For the first time in her life, she started earning success instead of broadcasting it. Slowly, people noticed. Coworkers respected her effort. Clients appreciated her professionalism. Even my girlfriend admitted she was improving, though she did so with obvious disappointment. I was hoping for at least one dramatic meltdown. You'll survive. Barely. The biggest change happened within the family. One evening my parents asked to meet for dinner. I almost declined. Almost. The conversation wasn't easy. There were long silences. Awkward moments. A few uncomfortable truths. Eventually my mother apologized. Then my father did the same. Not the quick, convenient apologies they had offered online when the scandal exploded. Real apologies. The kind that come with regret. The kind that acknowledge damage. I accepted them. Forgiveness didn't erase the past. It simply meant I refused to let the past control my future. Several months later my sister earned her first promotion. Not because she was related to me. Because she deserved it. Watching her receive it felt strangely satisfying. Not because she won. Because she earned it. That difference mattered. Around the same time, my girlfriend surprised me with a small box. Inside was a ring. I stared at it. Then stared at her. Then stared at the ring again. Are you proposing? Possibly. Possibly? I'm still working on the speech. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the box. Naturally, I said yes. A few weeks later, our families gathered for a celebration dinner. Nothing extravagant. No sponsorships. No live streams. No drones. No trending hashtags. Just people sitting together and actually paying attention to one another. It felt strangely revolutionary. As I looked around the table, I realized how much had changed. 2 years earlier, my sister had been chasing internet fame. My parents had been obsessed with appearances. I had been sitting alone during chemotherapy wondering whether any of it mattered. Now the followers were gone. The sponsorships were gone. The scandals were forgotten. What remained were the things that actually mattered. Love. Growth. Second chances. And the people who stayed when life became difficult. The truth is, my sister survived the algorithm. I survived cancer. Only one of those experiences taught us what was truly important. And somehow, after everything, that turned out to be the funniest victory of all.